Welcome to another episode of Distory. My name is Kirk from walruscarp.com, and this evening, thankfully, we are going back for episode 101 to Tokyo Disneyland to finish up the ride-through of Big Thunder Mountain Railroad. And then we're going to attempt and do our darndest to get through Hong Kong, which is always a challenge with Big Grizzly Mountain. Kate, how are we doing this evening?
I'm doing good. I feel like I went down a crazy ride with this because I really wasn't familiar. I mean, I haven't been to Tokyo and I've definitely never been to Hong Kong. And so it was such a new experience to research. But yeah, I feel like I found a lot of things that connect back to all the things we've been talking about in this series, which is really fun. So I'm excited.
It's always nice when things connect.
Yes.
But you know what? That whole entire area is so crazy. Like Grizzly Gulch in and of itself is a little overwhelming.
It is. Yeah. And so we may not cover every tiny little detail of Grizzly Gulch, but we will cover some of the highlights and hopefully we'll see how far we get getting through that attraction. But let's just before we go forward, I do have a couple of notes from things that we've just I've found in my research. I know Kirk has a couple of things as well. One is I found some sticking Tommies inside another attraction that's not Big Thunder. So if you remember what those are, they're the like little metal, like almost like, I don't know, picks, I guess you could say. They're like little, and they have a loop on the end and they hold a candle, and they would use them in the mines back in the day. Well, I found one in Disneyland and I was so excited, and I sent this to Kirk and I was like, oh my gosh, I found a sticking Tommy. This is inside Snow White's Enchanted Wish. Inside the mine, they have some sticking Tommies on the wall.
Which, sadly, as soon as Kate had sent me this, we immediately have to go. Magic Kingdom, Seven Dwarfs, Mine Train. None. The only thing we have is lanterns on the walls. No sticking Tommies. Boo. Our mine stinks.
Sad. Were they even safety lanterns?
All of them were tubular lanterns, which, if you remember, that means that they're all encased in glass, but none of them were the safety variety, which had the additional mesh. But it had no exposed flame, technically, because it's encased in glass, but still not.
That doesn't seem accurate, though.
It's, you know what's funny about all of this nonsense? Seriously, I know too much about mining equipment and objects and being able to identify things way too quickly, you know?
So true.
I'm like, oh, I can't believe they have a dump bucket. At one point, going through a Tokyo ride through, I thought I saw a horseshoe that was facing up, which would mean that luck would fall your way. No, it was just like a dynamite box, but it was literally half a frame in a very blurry picture. I was like, oh, I wonder if that. And I went back to a POV, and I'm like, oh, gosh, dude, I'm like really reaching for stuff now. Like, I want to find more, and it's like not. It's like we've already covered it. We've already beaten it with Disneyland and Disney World.
It's true. So at this point, some of this will go really fast tonight just because we've already talked about it in previous episodes, and we won't need to rehash old equipment that we've already discussed multiple times. I do want to say, though, that I also found another Pelton wheel that we talked about in a previous episode. And this is your thing, Kirk, because you were talking about how the wheel is powered by water.
I love that it's low, and it literally harnesses the energy and forces the wheel up by shooting it downwards into little kind of like catching buckets that shoots it back up.
Yeah. So I found a little bit of a note on this that's a little bit connected to Tokyo. This is a note from Pat Burke, who did the scene setting, the staging of the attraction for Big Thunder Mountain. So he said, while I had been doing Tokyo Disneyland's Big Thunder in 1985/87, I located for Disneyland Paris's Geyser Mountain attraction, which never got built. We talked about that. A huge steel Pelton wheel with metal spokes and bronze Pelton buckets. So this is the one that he found here. The wheel had been one of two that had been part of the North Star Mine powerhouse in Northern California. Built in 1885, it would run for 30 years and was the first water-powered compressor air transmission of its kind and supplied compressed air to the entire Great North Star mining operation. using that wheel design in my storyline, I would now run into the setting by steam pressure for some great kinetics like steam, like Swiss Family Robinson's Treehouse. So it's like the other one that we saw in Disneyland with its water wheel. I did use part of the design of this wheel for my smaller Pilton wheels we made for Tokyo and Paris Big Thunders. They were made of white oak and steel and built by our Mapo. So that's the one we saw in the queue. Do you remember how we saw the Pilton wheel? But he said around this time in 1998, Disney's California Adventure was being designed, and Grizzly Rapids team under Chris Runco asked me for some suggestion of items that might be used on their project. I showed them some mining and logging equipment like a steam-powered logging mule winch that might be used, and they eventually bought one. As they needed 2 water wheels, they picked up the 1885 Pelton wheel. They tried to get it and it wasn't for sale, so they reproduced it. And that's the one that you see now in California Adventure that's spinning around next to where all of the rafts go up the ramp. So has a little bit of a connection back to Tokyo Big Thunder, which is really fun.
It bothers me to no ends that we don't have a Pelton wheel over at Sassagoula. I went back there praying it was a Pelton wheel and was sadly found just a water wheel.
It's just like a paddle wheel, right?
Boring, dude. Boring. Really? We're going to put the water from the top? Cool.
Yeah. Yep. That's a bummer. Just like they don't have those sticking Tommies. It's outdoors mine train. You do have them at Big Thunder, though. So, something.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, yes. Fortunately, we have them.
So I know that you also had a few extra pictures from things in Tokyo. Did you want to talk about this at all?
You know what's funny is I haven't opened this in so long that I only could get one of the photos out. If you guys remember, and if you don't, no problem, go back to our YouTube 2 episodes ago, and there was a very blurry bulletin board photo that we had, and we couldn't pull anything out of any of the POVs because why would anybody walking through the queue take the time to actually stare at these posters?
Only people like
Fortunately, actually, one of the very first friends that I ever made on the internet is a cast member who is out in Tokyo. So, and a heck of a photographer too. So I just said, hey, is there any chance that you have a photo of this? And they were like, actually, I do. I got you. I got you. I literally have one right now. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is so exciting. So, all right, hang on. Let me enhance. So this is going to be our really nice bulletin board. Has the Pony Express. If you know anything from your elementary school history, Pony Express was a way that we did original mail. It also shows wagon trains from Denver to Cheyenne to Laramie through Colorado.
Wagons.
Rock me mama. And then the one on the bottom left, I really like because it talks about the best farmlands in Colorado, Burlington and Missouri River and Railroad. And then it gives prices out for low prices, 6 per, and then it kind of trails off a little bit. And you only have the interest payment down. You don't have to pay principal to start. So I think, to me, it's exciting because when I think about this specific time period, do you remember? I think it was Far and Away. Did you ever see that movie with
no, I don't
with
think so.
Oh my gosh, with Tom Cruise? And I think it's Tom Cruise and Nicole Kidman, and he's a bare knuckle boxer, and he's moving. I think they're both from Ireland, and they're moving to the States to have like a better life. And when they move here, they're going out west to get his own piece of land. She's from like a super wealthy, fancy, and he's like, brusque and rough and tumble. And at the end of it, there's this big run towards during Manifest Destiny and taking over the Louisiana Purchase area. And he goes out and gets his own giant, huge plot of land that has a waterfall and a river running through it. It's awesome. It's a great film.
Does he have a Pelton wheel?
No, it's unrefined lands, but maybe he'll build a Pelton wheel.
Yeah.
But I just think about why would people go out there into the wilderness? One, there has to be like a financial incentive, right? So like if you have nothing and somebody's willing to give you large acreage in North American continent and you've never been there before, but there are these like intrinsic governmental benefits. like spreading democracy and capitalism in areas that were completely just barren and wild. So like lawless area. That's why you get these small little boom towns. And so having sheriffs and all those things like is kind of is bringing the wilderness into control in some way. And I just thought that was kind of interesting that, you know, the amount of, there was even, I found one section, even the federal government promoted westward migration through policies like the Homestead Act of 1862, which provided 160 acres of free land to settlers who would farm it for at least 5 years.
And that was hard to do. A lot of people they quit because they had nothing out there.
Yeah, there's no you figure if you had a water source, right, whether that's a lake, ponds, or rivers running through, you have a shot. A shot. But 160 acres is so insane to even think about and to hold on and to keep and to whether you have logging there. I don't know. Sorry, I just went on this like crazy. Why would anybody want to do this? But then there's also because of the indigenous tribes that were there in 1830, there was the Indian Removal Act. Now, granted, this is horrible. Horrible, but you got to talk about it because it was aimed at trying to relocate all the Native American tribes to make room for these settlers to push out more to the west. So I just think that's interesting that they even made a bulletin board banner for that. But it's totally true. I mean, if you could get 160 acres of free land, I think that's justified. Now, here they're talking about large discounts for cash. But, you know, this was the time period for people to go out and move. So,
yeah. Well, it's really interesting.
Yeah.
Definitely like place setting for this. Yeah.
Yeah, correct. I mean, because you got to remember we're still in that middle 1800s, early 1800s to late 1800s is kind of like our roving range of time frame where they pull most of their inspiration. Sometimes they dip into the early 1900s, but we don't we don't want to promote
like
that.
with the round oak stove.
Now, there's a mercantile supply store. There's also a ad for Old Injun whiskey. There's the Kingsburg Carnival Week that's coming up, which will host wrestling, a turkey shoot, log chopping, spike driving, a horse show, and a pie eating contest.
Ooh, that sounds fun. That's definitely what they used to do in those old west towns too.
Yeah, I love that.
Thing.
I still watch occasionally. I'll see those clips of like people doing. Do you ever see people do those like knife cutting things where they have like really sharp knives and it's like a guy who's like real serious. They have it in a holster and it'll be like a rope and they like cut the rope like real nice. And then there's like 20 water bottles and then they cut the water bottles. Like all this stuff reminds me of
no,
like,
I don't watch that.
Oh my God, dude, this is crazy entertaining.
It reminds
check
me
it
of
out.
like QVC when they're trying to like sell you those really sharp knives.
No, they're not selling anything. These guys are professionals and they are really skilled with their blade.
They're like, you can cut through a can.
I'm not kidding.
Shoe.
They'll like, after they like slice a tomato, they'll like cut a piece of paper and then they'll hack through like a bigger piece of rope. And every time they cut through like a bigger thing, you hear everyone in the crowd cheering. And I'm like, isn't that what knives do? But I don't know. I've never done it. It's literally on your For You page tonight. I'm telling you. It's
on your For You page.
Yeah.
Saying.
Okay. What else do we have? We have a gambling prohibited sign. And then there's also Stagecoach brand high quality tobacco in bags for 5 cents. The favorite for years.
It's interesting that it's like, you know, a lot of those things that probably would have been pulled from a U.S. park that it's still, I always feel like that's how Tokyo is. It's very much a time capsule of like how things used to be in the U.S. parks. You know, like Haunted Mansion still has their old setup for their portrait gallery and all those things. You know, I feel like it's just in a lot of ways, Tokyo is just a little time capsule because it hasn't been touched by like the U.S. culture and opinion and, you know, hasn't been swayed by any of that. It's just like, just how it used to be. It was okay to talk about all those things, you know?
Well, you know what the other thing too is having things like alcohol, gambling, writing Injun the way that they wrote it all of these things would be lost on folks that are from the area, right? Because they're not most are not 100% fluent in reading English. They might have good conversational English, but that's the point of this. It always freaks me out every time, because I think about the experience of going to a foreign park is exciting in how you have to navigate and how you want to learn phrases and some of the language, and so you can really kind of get ingrained in the culture. But there's so much English in these parks. It's like it's English first, and I get that too because that's foreign, So it's bringing a foreign culture to a group that's not used to it. So for them, that's exciting, even if they don't understand all of these reference points or pieces.
Anyway, do you have anything else there before we hop on this ride and visit Big Thunder Mountain?
No, I'm ready for it.
We're going to run through this one a little bit quickly because a lot of it is very much like the Florida version, which we've already gone through pretty well. But there are a couple of differences, so we're going to stop along the way and just kind of point out the differences between this one and the Florida park. So we already talked about the loading area. There's really not a lot there to look at. There's a couple of shovels. There's really not a lot of footage of what to see there, too.
Well, culturally, hang on, because Lem is going there and traveling there, we've learned a lot more. You actually aren't allowed to take any video in the loading, unloading, or on the rides. So anything that you see online is either a very specific media outlet or probably closer to people taking video that they should not
supposed to, right?
Yep.
So after you get on the ride, it starts out pretty much the same way where you go into a mine. They don't have any bats that are flying in this particular area that I saw. They do have red eyes, though, for the bats that you can kind of see.
Yay!
And you do head up a similar, the first A lift is similar to the other ones. The colors are a little bit different. You get a lot less of those rainbow colors in this area. Oh, you're showing the bat's eyes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And they do have the water that's flowing up above and down, like on either side of the train, like the ones in the U.S. used to, but they don't anymore. Or at least yours just full stop just doesn't even flow anymore in Florida, right? And ours is now on the left.
I don't like to talk about ours.
Making you uncomfortable.
Yeah, because we got nothing. Like this, when you look at the water that's coming off of this, it looks tremendous. And that effect is so lost on Disney World. So
I'm just sad that they don't have that at Disneyland anymore. Like, there must be a reason for it. I wonder if it's a structural thing. So I don't know. But they still have it there. Like I said, it's like a time capsule over there in Tokyo. So after you go up this lift hill, and then we're going to go down to the left, just like in Florida. And then it will do a U-turn back around to the right, around some saguaro cacti, barrel cacti, and there's also a third kind of cacti that's there. Did you learn anything about that cacti? Did you look it up?
Really cool cacti.
But it's something to notice that there isn't any bones or ore carts here. So the storytelling is not a flash flood like Florida. So
yeah, there's because we have cattle bones specifically in Florida, and yeah, there's nothing here.
Yeah, it's a little bit more barren.
Oh, it's more bare bones.
All right, then we go and we see the possum tree. Which this is kind of where we start to move away from the Florida version and instead kind of do a Disneyland version, because we see the possum tree, and instead of going into the town of Tumbleweed, the track makes a turn and then dives into a cave that's like the Coyote Canyon one that's in Disneyland. So it's a little bit of a hybrid of both.
Yeah, I love that Coyote Canyon section of this attraction. I loved it in Disneyland too. It's just such a nice little. We don't have enough animals.
Well, they howl as you go through the canyon, which is really fun too. So, and remember, in Disneyland, it's there because it's trying to hide Fantasyland, which is literally 25 feet away. But so then we're going into B Lift, which is a little bit different because there's actually a mining camp here, and the mining camp has a little cabin, which is fun. That's one of the first things you see, and I got a really good picture of it, which is neat. There's also laundry that includes a red handkerchief that's hanging on the line. which makes me think, is that intentional because of the order of the red
1000%.
handkerchief?
1000%.
I'm glad you said that. I think you're going to say, like, nah. Like...
No. I saw that. This one, it doesn't look as saturated as I saw in another video, but I couldn't find that one. That has got to be a call out to Disneyland.
Yeah, that's what I think. Why else? I mean, because it's the original miners, right? All right.
Now, hang on, time out. Can you pull that picture back up?
Yes.
This is time to be annoying. Welcome to eating like a miner. I had to look up because I was like, is there a name for this giant pot? And of course, it's just, they could be made out of many different things. They could be made out of, this one looks like it's cast iron, but they also had copper ones as well. And there were some tin ones, but most of them, especially Dutch oven style ones, which was the majority of how people cooked over a fireplace, were made out of cast iron. They could be placed directly on the fire or on coals and heaped on top of their lids so you can cook from top to bottom. Of course, they use frying pans. A lot of people think of like, bacon and whatnot. But here's one of my favorite things ever. And you see one of these in the queue, and I couldn't find the picture. I had some internet issues, so but I wanted to talk about it because we've seen this multiple times, but we've never really addressed it. Are the coffee pots. We've never talked about coffee pots. And I'm not talking about Chester. No, he's Chester Copper Pot. Never mind. Sorry. Goody reference. Making coffee was a daily ritual, and miners used to make cowboy coffee. Do you know what cowboy coffee is?
Yes, I think so, but you should explain it.
Okay. It's really simply put, it's like the easiest way to make coffee ever. Think of like a French press, but without the whole press. AKA, you're just dumping grounds into hot water. So they would have these coffee pots that they would put directly on the coals. They would put lots of ground coffee that was strong, unfiltered, and they would just add it to the boiling water. The way that you would not be just sipping on grounds the whole entire time is you would let them settle. So, yeah, I just thought that was really cool. Here's another thing. Do you guys want to talk about what kind of foods they ate?
Yes, please. Beans?
Tell me, Kirk, what kind of foods they eat? Thank you, everyone. Bacon and beans were the staple foods due to their long shelf life and ease of preparation. Beans were often soaked and boiled for meals, while bacon was fried and provided a substantial source of protein and fat. Also, coming back, this is like post-Civil War, hardtack and cornmeal were used commonly to stretch out supplies. You could take it and turn it into a biscuit or mush or oatmeal to make simple cakes over a fire. Obviously, you had wild game and foraged foods, things like deer, rabbits, birds, and fish from nearby streams, and of course, berries and herbs when available. And then lastly was sludgy pancakes. They were made of whatever flour was available and often mixed with water or milk, and it was very, very common.
I don't want sludgy pancakes.
I didn't even know that was a thing.
Gross.
Yes, you do. Who doesn't want sludgy pancakes?
So right past the camp is a boiler, and then like I guess it's like a tractor, similar to maybe the one that's out front that we talked about last time. So it looks like this.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And then
because this could also be a portable engine too, because they do have right behind it, like this could be a portable steam engine that's powering the winch tower.
Yeah, it seems
it is
like
connected.
It's that. It does seem like it's similar to Disneyland storytelling in that it's powering the winch tower and pulling the train up the hill. So that's what I think. But I don't think I have anything else to say about that unless you do. That's
all I got to say about that.
Okay. And inside the winch tower, there's just a couple of tools and a lamp and stuff. There's nothing really of note to see there. So then we're going to see the rams as we go up over the hill. And it's not the ram trick because they're on the wrong side of the tracks. So just like Disney World, it's the rams are there, but there's no ram trick.
Just look to the right, people. You'll have a great time.
After this, you're going to go on Spiral Butte, just like before in Florida, through some more cacti, and then you'll see right before you hit the next lift hill, There's like a little area that's kind of like I want to say it's almost like a blacksmith area. It's definitely got a whole bunch of tools there. I couldn't get any great photos of this area. I tried. For the life of me, I tried. There is an anvil. There's a ladder. Like mine's even like crooked. So I got.
Yeah.
So I didn't see anything. It looks like there's like a little mini blacksmith area. I don't know if you got anything else there, Kirk.
No, because my video just went through it so fast.
So then we're headed into the sea lift. There is also that what I think is a counterweight that's above your head is also there in this attraction, just like in Florida. And here they have a whole bunch of red lights, and I feel like the storytelling is that it's on fire somehow. Have you seen anything that explains this lift hill?
No, because I can never see the lift hill. Nobody has a good enough camera.
Well, I have like a picture. It definitely looks like there's things falling, but it's not like exploding like Disneyland. Red is definitely
maybe it's like
color.
A cave-in.
It could be. There's definitely falling rocks projected at the end of the tunnel. So I could see it being, like an earthquake. An earthquake would be very fitting for Tokyo, especially if people are talking about tsunamis and things like that. Then an earthquake would make a lot of sense for Tokyo in terms of their geography and whatnot. The final segment of the ride is also one of the most different parts of this area because you go to the left and you actually go into a tunnel. And this is where we finally see the bats flying overhead. And I got a great picture of the bats. Look at them on their little strings.
Oh, they look so good.
I know. So they were getting evacuated from this area. I was like, oh, yay. And then instead of crossing back over the drop from the third lift hill, the track makes a 180-degree turn to the right before dropping out of a tunnel and going through this dinosaur gap geyser scene at the end, which just have some cracked dinosaur eggs and whatnot. But it looks similar to the Disneyland and Disney World versions, but it's definitely just organized a little bit differently. So
it's more truncated. However, I like the color of the water because it's just like crystal blue spring, and you also get the water effects that are only found at Disneyland. That spray, like you're touching down into the water and dipping into it, where we do not have that in Walt Disney World.
Right. That was that ode to Walt Disney's original mountain, the Matterhorn, because you splash down at the end, and that was original Tony Baxter's idea as a tribute to Walt and his original mountain. So then we go into another short tunnel under the queue and past the stamp mill. And then on the right side, there's a couple other things here at the end. There's an ore cart with a shaft above it attached to a donkey engine, which is fun. And then
what'd you call me?
Can't wait to go. There's also a wagon with spare parts and wagon wheels, and there's some rails on the ground too. To me, it looks very much like a blacksmith, like in Magic Kingdom, because they have a bunch of tools there as well that you would see at the blacksmith, because it's almost identical to Magic Kingdom in its setup in terms of blacksmith tools. From there, and there's also a walking beam engine, which was something new that I had.
A what?
Walking beam engine, which I think is an engine that walks along the rails.
So walk on beams?
It's gymnastically inclined.
Yeah.
At this point, you turn back into the load area, and then there's some antlers on the wall on the left, and then there's those posters that we couldn't tell what they were, because from a blurry picture. And that was that. Except I did see they have their own kind of mine-tailing rock wall, but it's very clearly not mine tailings from the one that we talked about with the apple dumpling gang before. They're definitely just kind of made to look like mine tailings versus the ones they actually shipped in from mines, real mines. So, after that, I don't, unless I skipped by anything you wanted to talk about, I think that's all I've got for Tokyo.
I've got nothing.
Got nothing. Okay.
I had my time with my cowboy coffee. You want to see a cowboy drinking coffee?
Always.
Yeah. I don't have many more photos now because nothing's loaded, so this is what I got.
That's not even an old-fashioned one. It's like a modern-day cowboy. So let's travel over to Grizzly Gulch. We're going to go to the Big Grizzly Mountain Runaway Mine Cars. That's not a mouthful and a half. That is over in Hong Kong Disneyland. And this ride is not exactly Big Thunder, but it takes enough from Big Thunder's history that I think it's really important that we include it in this series. So Grizzly Gulch is essentially their Frontierland for Hong Kong Disneyland. And it's a very, very small space. It was added as part of an expansion to the park in early 2009. Hong Kong Disneyland proposed a financial arrangement to expand the park, adding 3 new themed areas, which was approved later that year. And then in December, they had the official groundbreaking ceremony. So this is much smaller than all the other Frontierlands. Joe Lanzazero, who's an Imagineer, said it wasn't a traditional Frontierland by any means, but it certainly possessed the same kind of feeling. So you can see the welcome to Grizzly Gulch, the luckiest little town in the West, and then it was founded in 1888, which we'll see that 8 is a very lucky number in Chinese culture, so it shows up a lot, which is also why the population is 108, not including the bears. That is also on one of the signs as well. So all those, every time you see an 8, it's supposed to be a lucky number.
Yeah, if you look at this area, it really only has one major attraction, a small water area, a quick service, and 2 carts. So there's Big Grizzly Mountain Runaway Mine Cars, which is our ride that we're going to talk about, which is their kind of Big Thunder. Ride through the town of Grizzly Gulch on the mine cars. And then there's Geyser Gulch, which you can get soaked in this splash pad play area. And then there's the Lucky Nugget Saloon, and then a popcorn cart, and then a frozen lollipop cart.
So this whole area has a theme of man versus wild. This is from Imagineering. So how mankind encroaches on natural resources and land and forgets the consequences of their actions. So it also plays off of a lot of the bear country themes that we've seen in the past, especially that we've talked about a lot on this series. If you remember back with the True Life Adventure, Bear Country by Walt Disney. Then we also had the Bear Country in Mine Train Through Nature's Wonderland and Bear Country in Disneyland, which is now Critter Country. So it ties back into that Bear Country theme that has been in Disney for a very, very long time. And they really just play off of that a lot. And then there is also, I love that it's founded in 1888 because do you remember, Kirk, how the stamp mill that's in Disneyland's queue also, it was an actual stamp mill from 1888? So I wonder if there's a throwback to that, or if they just decided to choose that because of the lucky number 8s. It could be either or both. But I love that kind of connection back to the original Big Thunder. I think it's a fun one.
I'm going to go both, just so you feel better and they feel better.
So the backstory of this area is that it's placed in Northern California during the gold rush. Grizzly Gulch was founded on August 8th, 1888, believed to be the luckiest day of the luckiest month of the luckiest year. However, the early settlers of the region ran into misfortune as they soon discovered that they had built atop a geyser field. This old part of town is now called Geyser Gulch. Eventually, the town's luck began to change. Captain Phineas Cosgrove was exploring the mountainside and came across a family of 3 bears scratching themselves along the rocks, which might sound a little bit familiar to what Mark Davis did in Mine Train Through Nature's Wonderland. As they left, he found traces of gold and staked a claim, starting the Big Grizzly Mountain Mining Company. As the mine grew, another amazing find came when a local stray golden retriever named Lucky sniffed out and led miners to a gigantic 150-pound gold nugget, now on display.
It's pretty cool because it's like on a scale and it's tipping the scale. It's huge.
Yeah, at the assay office. So it's gigantic.
Scales you can trust.
These animals have become beloved mascots of the town, with the family of bears given the names Rocky, Motherlode, and Nugget being given protection in spite of them occasionally making trouble for the mine. Nobody is allowed to bother the bears because of the good fortune they brought to Grizzly Gulch, but the bears have been known to create a little havoc once in a while. It's not uncommon to hear about a mine car that's gotten loose because of something the bears unwittingly did, or to hear an unexpected explosion deep in the mountain. So prospectors are encouraged to beware. When the bears are hibernating, all is well, but when they wake up, look out, anything can happen.
By the way, the bears this is the first time that an animal character takes a major role in the storyline of a Big Thunder or a mine car style roller coaster. And when I watched this for the first time, I was like, man, I still think Paris is the best version, but holy cow, this is such a unique experience.
Yeah.
It's really cute. And the audio animatronics for the bears are awesome. And they lead the story along.
Yes. And so in front of that gold nugget, Lucky's footprints can actually be seen in front of it. So that's something to look for. Yeah. And they also have bear paw prints can be seen on some of the walkways. So that's, if you see that, that's the storytelling there. And there's also a hidden gold Mickey nugget visible on one of the canyon walls, which we'll show in a bit. But yeah, you're right. There's Geyser Gulch is also another water play area that's kind of in this area just for other things that are here. There's also something called a Feudin Deluge. Did you see this at all, Kirk? Because this was really cute.
Well, so there was all these different storefronts and walkable areas that I actually at first didn't know if they were just part of the themed area in town or if they were part of the queue. Because the way that the one POV you sent me kind of like was moving through.
Yeah. So they have this thing that's kind of like these two stores that are next to each other. There's Rusty O'Toole blacksmith shop, and then there's a store next to them that's a dry goods shop, ironically, and they're having a feud. And so you can go and squirt water back and forth between the shops with these giant bellows and try to get the other guests soaked. Yeah, isn't that fun?
So I at first thought that was part of like an interactive cube, but it just so happens that it's like a fun little splashy water area.
Yeah, it's just part of the town. They also have a miracle elixir sign on a wall, which I thought was really fun as a throwback to Mark Davis. And
snake oil salesman.
Mm-hmm. So there's a little nod to him there. And there's also, I found the welcome wagon, Kirk. I found you a wagon.
Aw. I love me some wagons.
The other thing that I just wanted to there's two things that I want to point out here is the jail is really fun. It's kind of a photo opportunity that you can stick your head in and like get your picture taken as like somebody who's wanted, which is just really fun. But inside the jail is some storytelling because there's words all over the walls. Like I was framed from the kid. There was like, ain't got a nugget to pay my bail, so I'm stuck here in Grizzly jail. I like. Do you
have the one that the sheriff wrote? Because the sheriff is actually not even in the jail.
Oh yeah, here. You want to read that one?
Yeah. Went to the Lucky Nugget, so he went to the restaurant/bar. Be right back. Go ahead and lock yourself up. Sheriff Justice. Now, if you look at the actual jail, the door is wide open and the back has been smashed through, so you can like walk directly through the jail.
Well, that's part of the storytelling because on here is Dynamite Dallas McGee was here, but not for long. Dynamite Dallas McGee was here again, but not for long. So he like blew up the side of the jail.
I love that.
It's just really clever storytelling. Then you can see the big hole in the wall at the back of the jail there. So just really fun. And the other thing I found that was over at the Lucky Nugget was this Madame Rubenstein. I'm interested, Kirk, if you recognize this image of this woman that's on here.
You know what? She looks familiar to like all that era of like when absinthe was really popular. Those style ads were all over the place and almost like French.
Yeah, it looks kind of like a ballerina too. And it says the San Francisco Songbird offering a charming exhibition of her singing and dancing talents. And I looked all over for this. I was like, it's so familiar. And you know where I found that image? It's in Disneyland on the Golden Horseshoe out in front.
Ah, there you go.
So I don't know where exactly the image comes from. I'm going to keep doing some digging on that. But it's the same with the woman kind of holding this garland above her head who looks a little bit like a ballerina. they use the same image for both places, which I think is a fun throwback to Disneyland. So,
fun fact, Kate goes to the Golden Horseshoe to not only get a delicious, usually sundae, right? Or
it's
milkshake.
Sundae.
Mm-hmm. And to read.
Yeah, I do.
It's like
I hide
it's like
in
a
there.
it's a sundae and read.
Oh, they had the best one.
This sundae?
This one was an warm apple crisp sundae that also had caramel in it. And it was like chunks of apple. It was so good.
Yeah, I remember you tend to send me photos that we will never see over here in Florida. Like the churro sundae was pretty crazy. We had a churro sundae in Mexico, but it was nowhere near as cool as the one.
It was like a cookie butter churro one. It's so good. I have never had a bad sundae from there. I've had sundaes that are overflowing and really sticky, which is awful, but they're so good that you don't care that your hands are sticky. You just like make do. Anyway.
Yeah, well, I can't go get sundaes with you because you always get better treatment at the plaza than I ever will. You get whatever you want.
All my whipped cream. It was great. Whipped
cream, extra peanut butter. What else do you need? Me, they one squirt and beat it squirt. I have the menu for the Hong Kong's Lucky Nugget. Libations and tasty grub, fish and chips, shrimp and chips. These are all typical things that you would find in a mining town.
Right.
Fish and chips.
Fish and chips.
Shrimp and chips, chicken nuggets and chips, French fries, and fruit salad cup. Now, I just did the math on it. All of these items, a Hong Kong dollar is roughly worth 13 cents. So most of these items are around $6.
So there's also a local paper called the Grizzly Gulch Growler, which is reporting the bear facts since 1888. And they talk about hibernating bears, Lucky the dog digging up and burying nuggets, and geysers causing the old town to slip. Are you okay over there?
You remember you said that the old town slipped up. So I was just reenacting that real quick. My pillow knocked over my light.
All right. Are we good to go on to the ride itself? I feel like we've got
please and thank you.
Okay.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about Big Grizzly Runaway Mine Cars, which is the only attraction in this area. I love how somebody described it as the bougie Big Thunder. I was like, that's kind of an interesting way of putting it. But it's a hybrid of several existing Disney attractions, and I think that's pretty neat in itself. So it's a little bit of a combination of, what is it? It's like California Screamin', which is now Incredicoaster, Big Thunder, Grizzly River Run. I feel like, Everest. So it's just like a combination of a whole bunch of things. So this is a Vekoma mine train roller coaster that was 3,600 feet of track, runs about 3 minutes, 14 seconds, and a top speed of 45 miles per hour. So yeah, combination of a whole bunch of those ones. Oh, and also Bear Country in Disneyland. That was the other thing that it was kind of a combination of. So it's kind of like they took all these pieces from all these different Disney attractions and just like combined them into a ride. And a really cool one at that. So it is also the second Disney ride to have a backwards section of track after Expedition Everest. It took 5 years to complete. The Imagineers spent time touring old gold mines in California's Route 49 to kind of get a feel for what the attraction should be like. So I looked up Route 49 because I was like, I don't think I've ever been on that. There's a gold discovery site marked on that map, but it does go by Yosemite National Park as well. The mountain also resembles Grizzly Peak in California Adventure, although it looks a lot more like a bear in California Adventure than it does here. So this is what it looks like here at Grizzly River Run. That's what Grizzly Peak looks like there. And I was just reading about Grizzly Peak, Kirk, that was not going to be the, like, you know how each park has its icon, and this Grizzly Peak is the icon for California Adventure. But they weren't planning on that while they were developing the park. They were actually planning on using like the big sun wheel, the Ferris wheel. And then they pivoted almost like the last minute to using Grizzly Peak as its icon instead, which I thought was pretty interesting.
Yeah, I wondered why.
They must have thought it looked more California than like a generic, and also Walt hated Ferris wheels. So I think it's more in keeping with in honoring Walt to not use a Ferris wheel as a signature for one of his rides or his parks. This ride took 5 years to complete. I already mentioned that. So Grizzly Peak is actually only 88 feet high here, and you can see what it looks like in Hong Kong. Because the number 8 is lucky. So it's meant to quadruple prosperity, and also has those artificial geysers, which are a throwback to Mine Train Through Nature's Wonderland, and also Magic Kingdom's Big Thunder. So that's where the geysers come in. There was 140 Imagineers that worked on this project, and one of them that led the design teams was Joe Lanciero. He started as an animator, then worked in the story department, and then became an Imagineer. So I read a little interview with him, and he said that telling people positive stories with inspirational messages is the most enjoyable part of his job, which is also the most enjoyable part of my job. So I love that, especially in a world where people have to face many negative things. He said, we wanted something not only unique to Hong Kong, but unique in the world too. We wanted to keep the tradition and tell a story. So we had to keep in mind that we needed to have one foot in the past and one in the future. So that gives you a context of what they were thinking about as they developed this attraction. Did you hear any music that was actually on this attraction? I feel like everything's overlaid music.
No, because the one that I had watched had its own like overlaid music too, right, in the background. So, but I didn't hear anything specifically. There are sound effects multiple times throughout it, but.
Well, I saw on a Disney official site that the music was done by Danny Elfman, which is like major composer. He did Beetlejuice and Batman and Edward Scissorhands. He did the themes for The Simpsons. He did Nightmare Before Christmas.
It must be the queue,
Must be. Yeah.
Because the queue always has like an old-timey kind of vibe, sound-wise.
Right. In terms of storytelling, there are some miners that work this mine. There's dynamiter Billy Boomer McCoy, lead digger Donegan Digger Riley, and the smallest miner, Tiny Thompson. And can I just go on a very short rabbit trail?
Wait, did you just make an unintentional pun about Tiny Thompson and you're going on a short tangent?
Yes, it was totally unintentional. So I was reading in this interview with Bob Thomas, who is between Bob Thomas and Joe Fowler when they were creating Disneyland. And they said Walt Disney wasn't one to just like fire people willy-nilly. He had to have like a really good reason to fire people. So Bob Thomas said this. He said, I remember riding around in the Jungle Cruise with him in the Jeep before there was water in it. And Joe Fowler said, yes, I can remember another incident going around when the waterway was still dry in that area. We had a water car operated by a fellow named Tiny. Tiny weighed in the neighborhood of 300 pounds, and Tiny was one of those boys who was always skylarking, as we say in the Navy. His particular delight was to catch someone on a ledge with his high-powered hose. And he caught the wrong man because Walt came around the corner on a Saturday morning and he caught him with the hose. And that was the one time when Walt said to me, get rid of that guy. And that was it. Tiny had done it once too often. So
the term skylarking means frolicking or mischievous behavior. But for the Navy, it was those who were in particular fond of antics.
So yeah, Tiny did a little bit too much skylarking. They would typically climb and slide down the backstays for fun.
What is a backstay?
A backstay on a ship?
It has to be, right?
Yeah. I'm trying to remember. But this is something they said that was the only time they recalled Walt kind of firing somebody on the spot. Tiny.
The backstay is a piece of standing rigging on a sailing vessel that runs from the mast to either its transform or rear quarter, counteracting the forestay and jib. That was all nonsensical gibberish. I don't know any. Speaking of jib, that was gibberish. None of that was English.
Okay. Another side tangent. Do you call it cut of your jib or cut of your jig? Because Elliot says one and I say the other.
I thought it was cut of your jib.
That's what I think. And because it's the cut of your jib sail. And because the jib sail's in the front of the ship. So it's something that you can use to kind of when you're trying kind of remember the nautical term, but when you're kind of going in a zigzag across the water, a jib sail can kind of help you do that. So the cut of your jib, though, really it would determine a lot of the way that your boat would move because of the way that it was shaped. So, but Elliot thinks it's the cut of your jig. And so this is a whole argument with us for our whole marriage. And here we are. Anyway.
So hang on. So this is saying that the reference of that is talking about somebody's appearance or demeanor, or even potentially the shape of their nose. This is an Old English saying, but came from sailing in the mid-18th century, time appropriate, when the nationality of warships sighted at sea could be accurately determined by the shape of their jib along before a national flag could be seen. So, for instance, French jibs were cut much shorter than the luff on the luff. This is such on the luff than English ones, giving a distinctly more acute angle in the clew. What in the word? Clew is spelled C-L-E-W.
Well, luff means if it's luffing, it means it's like vibrating like this. It's like flapping in the wind. If my sailing days taught me nothing else, I know that. Okay, so but it is a nautical term, right? It's for sea, Elliot. I don't know if you're listening.
It is.
Anyway, sorry I took us on a really random tangent with tiny and ship sails.
That's okay. I learned the etymology of a phrase that I've used very rarely.
Maybe I'll use it more now. All right. Well, the other two characters, besides Tiny, we also have the dog, which is technically J.R. Lucky Striker is his name. And then there's also a canary keeper named Bertram Birdie Singer.
Oh,
canaries, yeah.
Little birdies.
So as much as I would love to finish this entire ride this episode, I think this is a good place for us to pause before we dive into the concept art, the queue, and the ride, and that will just be our next episode. And that's what the series is about. We can do.
I mean, you knew this was going to happen. You knew this was going to happen because you started talking about Grizzly Gulch. If you would have cut over it, but you can't cut over it because it sets up the storyline for the actual ride. So
it does.
This is a necessary evil.
Yeah. But so I think our next episode will just be, we're not going to go to Disneyland Paris or anything in this next episode. It's just going to be Grizzly Gulch and this ride in particular of Big Grizzly.
I'm stoked. You guys are going to really like the concept of it. Because again, Kate had kind of one of the major fun surprises is that this has a backwards element, which does not exist in any of the other minecart attractions. So I think that's a really, really cool thing. Reminds me more of Everest, but the way that they apply it here is very unique and a beautiful story-driven piece. So I'm super, super stoked to, I don't want to rush it. And you want to have visuals, like it just makes more sense. Yeah.
So let's pause there, and then we will come back next week with...
pause.
Pause there. We'll come back next week with more of Big Grizzly Runaway Mine Cars. I had to look that up because it's so long. But, alrighty, let's wrap it up, yeah?
Let's pull this train into the station.
Thank you, everybody, for joining us for this episode of Distory. We hope that you enjoyed going through the rest of Tokyo's Big Thunder Mountain and also learning a little bit about Grizzly Gulch as we jump into the Hong Kong version of Big Thunder, if you will. Kirk, do you have any final words here as we wrap up this evening?
Are you loofing at me? Because I don't see anyone else here. Are you loofing at me?
I like the cut of your jib.
I don't have a clue about what we're talking about.
Oh, well, I'll just have to bear with you for another episode then.
Stick to the...
I took a hard right there. Sorry.
Yeah, I was like, you need to stick to the boating terms.
I'll just keep this show afloat then for the both of us.
That's better. That's better.
All right. Thank you, everybody, for being with us for this episode. We really appreciate you guys so much. And we will see you next week as we head back to Hong Kong and finish Big Grizzly Runaway Mine Cars. We'll see you next time.